talk about
Yep.
might just sort of keep us moving in the meantime. So regional and rural issues is something that VCOSS is increasingly engaging with. Rural communities here in Victoria are in the process of enormous structural change at the moment. Changes in ageing population, the sorts of pressures that creates, the sorts of opportunities that creates, but communities that potentially have little social infrastructure, but are an older community, as well at the same time the economic change, which is going to create different and almost two-track pressures in rural and regional communities in terms of what's happening with the agricultural sector, what's happening relating to drought, water pricing, those sorts of big economic pressures, locusts, bushfires, significant pressures on rural Victorians. How does the state government invest to ensure rural communities retain access to services while also developing a renewed economic base to support future security?
I think it's a really key area, and one of the things as a government we've always been about is growing the whole state and making sure the regions grow. So, the 5 fastest growing cities in inland Australia today are all in Victoria: Bendigo, Ballarat, Shepparton, Wodonga and Mildura. I would say that the vast majority of our small towns are now doing well. They weren't a decade ago. People were leaving them in droves. On the sort of economy side, the trick I think in the big regional centres has been to get more of the knowledge-based jobs into those areas. So if you look in Ballarat, for example, the IT park we created there, particularly around IBM's, now got something like 1,400 jobs there. So it is true that over the last 20-30 years we've seen a continuing loss of manufacturing jobs. So the challenge here is to make sure that we get new jobs in things like the knowledge industries, the service industries, build off broadband and so on. In agriculture, the northwest of the state, the Wimmera pipeline has been a godsend. So everyone up there now has got a full water entitlement, even though storages are just at 20%. In food bowl, we're spending $1 billion to lift that irrigation infrastructure to really world's best and sustain that and sustain the value adding. And then I think through things like our $631 million regional blueprint that Minister Allen and I released, that's all about providing support for universities, providing support for apprentices, providing support for small towns as well. So I'm pretty optimistic, actually. You are right to say there's a big challenge with an ageing population. There is. And so investing in our hospitals, in our health centre, in our aged care facilities, in home and community care, these things are fundamental. But I think we're actually making pretty good progress in the regions.
What do you see as opportunities for, in particular around rural students and assisting rural students into education and employment?
Well, I think the big thing there again is out of the regional blueprint. So we're going to be building thousands of new student accommodation places in the regional universities, because that's still a huge barrier to country students. As you know, the participation rate is still lower. There's going to be a number of basically scholarships and cadetships there to make sure that students are promised work back in the region if they undertake certain studies, and again that's part of the blueprint. And I think the creation of the technology parks around the universities too is creating this cluster of new jobs and opportunities which are great for students. But we've still got a big challenge here. I again would say this is a big challenge going forward to lift the participation rate of country students in higher education. It's fundamentally a federal responsibility, but I think the things we're doing, supporting things like student accommodation and with the growth in jobs through clustering technology parks, all creates a better environment. Plus, of course, we've created, I think, dental chairs in Wodonga and Bendigo and Ballarat, so that's too creating new opportunities for students.
Thank you. Next, VCOSS covers a very wide range of issues, as you'd be aware. We have members working right across the social sector, so keeping moving. One of the questions that has been posted relates to ending homelessness in Victoria. So with over 20,000 homeless Victorians, Michelle B believes homelessness is one of the biggest challenges our incoming government faces. The new homes being built using nation building is a great start, but we need to do more and keep investing. She has a few questions she would like to ask you to answer regarding the actions another Labor government would take to end homelessness. And there's a couple here. One of them was that last year around 58,000 men, women and children went through homelessness services in Victoria. How would you make homelessness services to ensure to meet current and future demand for crisis accommodation so that services no longer have to place people in rooming houses, motels and caravan parks?
Well, this is an area that I've been very closely involved with, and I think, as you know, and Richard Wynn's been a fantastic minister, I think, in this area, really pushing it. So we've made some big commitments. It's just a few months ago that we opened the Elizabeth Street Common Ground complex, which I think is just a brilliant project and a whole new approach to policy that I announced just last week. We announced, I think it was $15.7 million to further build our strategy in this area and to assist individuals and families.
That would be the youth voice announcement.
And that's exactly right. Yep, 15.7 million in terms of young people. And then, of course, as part of the homelessness strategy, there was further funding available to assist 250 families who are escaping family violence and give them access to social housing or private rental. And so I think we're making good progress in this area. And in terms of the federal government's target about halving homelessness, that's a target that we support. It's an aspirational target and it's one that we support.
So would you actually publicly commit your government to the target of halving homelessness by 2020?
I reckon, I think I've done that, but I'll check the record. But I'm pretty sure when I did the opening of Common Ground, I'm pretty sure we said that. Yeah.
Thank you. Another whole area. One of the questions is from M. Anderton from Melbourne, pushing the federal government to develop a national disability insurance scheme for all Australians with a disability. And the question is how? What likelihood is there that this will succeed?
Well, we made a submission, and we made that submission actually a couple of months ago, and we announced recently that we'd made that submission. So we've supported that. So this is being looked at by the Productivity Commission. So what the final analysis will look like, I don't know. Whether it ends up being recommended and taken up by the federal government, I don't know that. But we have certainly supported a national disability insurance scheme. I think there's widespread support in the community. I don't pretend it's easy. But it's certainly something that we've supported. But I think the ball is now with the Productivity Commission and the federal government, and we'll wait for their report to come back.
And certainly a national disability insurance scheme would really create a generational difference in terms of support and universal support.
It'll be huge. And then I think it'll be huge. And then what the work they'll do will look at how it would work and you know, eligibility and cost and all of those issues, and then they'll come back. But we've made a submission strongly supporting it.
Thank you. Education. M. Cronin from Northcote. There are many children and young people under the age of 16 not attending school or receiving an education, despite efforts to improve the education system. How will a re-elected Labor government ensure all children and young people do receive an education, and what will they put in place to support those community agencies currently providing education services for marginalised children and young people? The young people who've fallen out of the mainstream system.
Yeah, no, it's a good. It's quite a challenging area. I guess a couple of points. One broad point, if I could, about education. I mentioned this in the launch on Wednesday. I think I probably mentioned this in just about every speech I make about education. I think some of the place-based approaches that we've taken are working, and I think they're getting results. So if you go out to Broadmeadows, where we've done a huge regeneration program out there, I think all of the evidence that's come in now, just in the 18 months since we've completed some of those first schools, is overwhelming in terms of student attendance, student achievement, student retention, student outcomes. And we've had to make a lot of changes, invest a lot of money, bring in some new principals, new teachers into the area to add to the pool of talent, but it's made a difference. So I would say, in a general sense, governments have struggled with this issue for decades and decades and decades. If you look at Victoria, how do our kids perform? It's not a normal curve, it's a curve that's sort of sharp at the front. We've got many children who do very, very well, but we have a long tail.
Yes.
And the challenge is to shorten that tail so that those opportunities aren't wasted. But I think if you, and for the viewers today, have a look at the difference that the regens are making, I reckon it's the way forward. I announced today too our education policy, big capital spend. One of the other big areas will be around Maroondah, so another big regeneration project there, about $100 million worth of spend, so it's a big investment, but I'm confident it will make a difference. Beyond that, we announced as part of the policy just today, $28 million for alternative settings for students who are disengaged, who are dropping out of the system. So there are many teachers that say to me, and VCOSS has always said to me, that we need an alternative setting for those students. So we made available $28 million to do that today. And I think the combination of these things, the broader investment, particularly focused around the regens, plus the $28 million for particular alternative out-of-school settings, these are things that will make a difference. And I've got to say, in my life, working in the federal parliament, chairing the federal parliamentary committee, and before that as a teacher and working in the teachers union, I have seen alternative settings that have worked and have changed young people's lives.
Yes.
And so building that flexibility in, I think will make quite a difference.
I mean, one thing that struck me, and this isn't in the written down questions,